Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to take a look at the Hitachi TRK-8000E. Now I've got to be honest, I've got an 8000E and an 8005E which I was looking to feature on the channel at some point, but they had been builders units and they were completely full of sawdust. The casings were smashed, the paintwork had all been scuffed off with saws and things like that. And as you know, regular viewers to the channel will know that I like to try and repair and restore boomboxes, Walkmans, vintage games, and try and make them as close to new as possible. And I always say, if everything is present and correct, if it's generally in good condition but needs some kind of fettling or tape deck service or something like that, it's going to be far more interesting and relevant and indeed useful to you guys, because obviously there's no point showing you how to sort of vacuum loads of thick sawdust out of a tape mech and try and repair bodged up broken bits of plastic. Much nicer to actually take a stock unit with its original screws and fixings and see how we can go in there and give it a general service, replace the belts, that kind of thing. So this one came up and I thought it'd be a perfect example to do just that. Now on the face of it, it looks like it's in really good condition actually. It's not really bashed about, it's not scuffed and scratched. All the knobs and switches are present and correct. The aerial is in decent condition, it's not bent, it's got the original black plastic tip on there. The handle is intact. Now quite a lot of the early TRKs with that handle design, the plastic is actually normally peeled away by now and they're normally held on by tape. So this is all promising stuff. Now I have tested it already on my unboxing video, so do check that out if you haven't seen it. But basically the radio works perfectly well. The issue really is the cassette deck today that we want to look at. We do have other stuff to do, like clean the pots, because the volume is very crackly, and when we move the balance control it does actually drop out, I think, the right hand channel. So that should just be a switch cleaning exercise for us today, so we'll go and do all of that. But I actually bought it with the legendary needs a new belt. So on initial inspection I think that actually that may or may not necessarily be the case. It probably needs a new belt, but I think there's actually a separate issue. So I'll just recap on that now for you. So basically the issue seems to come about by, if I put a tape in, I think it fast forwards and rewinds, but there's no actual power to the play switch. So there we go, I'll just eject there. And if I rewind, oh, there we go, there's one of the issues. So the rewind switch doesn't stay down, and if I press on it again, watch the counter. Okay, so it's actually at the beginning of the tape now, so let's try that again. Right, see how I let go? And it's more like a momentary switch. So that switch is not staying in position and needs probably adjusting. The fast forward one I think is okay. Okay, and rewind again. Yeah. So every time we press rewind, the switch seems to come back again and turn itself off. Furthermore, if we try and press play now, let's try that again. Nothing. I can't even hear the motor turning. I can't see the spindles trying. It seems like it's completely and utterly dead. So I'm wondering if there may be an issue, maybe the power isn't getting to the play switch, or there may be more than one leaf switch in there, or the positioning of the mech parts means that the switch isn't being activated at the right time, or it's not locking in at the right time. Maybe the contacts are dirty, but the fact that they're working tends to suggest that they're actually more like bent out of shape or need adjusting. So this is going to be quite good fun, I think. It should be relatively easy, I guess, because we'll be taking it apart now. We'll have a look inside and see if we can figure out what's going on. So with that in mind, let's get this on the towel of destiny and crack it open. Alright then, the first thing we want to do is get the 6 screws away from the rear case. That's always reassuring. All 6 screws, not only are they present, but they actually still screw in properly, which tends to suggest nobody's been messing about in here before. Oh, and not forgetting this small screw here as well. There's a very short screw right in the middle. Now we should be able to lift everything away, like so. And that is attached by the aerial, the antenna cable just on one corner, and then we've got the attachments from the battery compartment just up onto there, and they are marked positive and negative, which is handy. So that's the rear casing away with the antenna attached, and obviously your power supply board and fuse are just there. So here are the innards then. I've got to say, it's super clean in here. It looks like it's in fabulous condition. So we've got the radio board here, of course, your ferrite rod antenna. There's your selector switch there for your different wave bands. What else? Your various sort of IF stages. That's HA11251 Hitachi chip. That's going to be your multiplex, I think, there. You've also got easy to access stereo separation trim pot and your pilot 19 kHz adjuster. That's all easy to get to. Not that we've got to do anything with the radio board, but it's so clearly laid out. It's lovely. Also got your records play bar sort of switches there. And what else? Okay, your preamp stage. Power amps are your LA4112s. Lovely little Sanyo units there. Good stuff. And yeah, everything else is laid out nicely. There's your master function switch, your monitor switch, beat cut, and I think these are your external speaker outs, and your 5-way DIN in-out record play, and your microphone ins. And there's a little mount there for that last little tiny little screw that we nearly forgot on the back casing. Yeah, and then you've got a secondary sort of daughter board here, which is going to carry your things like your FM stereo light and that sort of thing, your battery status light, and I think that's probably your headphone board just down at the bottom. Condenser mics, obviously left and right, are going to come into the board here. So that's a quick overview then. I'll just have a quick look around now, see what needs to come out so we can get access to the cassette mech. I'm not sure at this stage whether we can just unscrew a few and get everything out in one go, or whether we need to disconnect everything a la TRK-8000 and then sort of peel the board away that way. So we'll give that some thought and see how best to progress. I'm tempted to clean the switches and that sort of thing, but then I've got to do the pots anyway once we get the secondary board away. I'm just having a look down here. You won't necessarily see it at the moment, but I can see that the belts are intact. I don't know what sort of condition they're in. I can't quite... Yeah, they don't feel too bad actually. But yeah, that's interesting. I can see the leaf switch just there, and the connectors for them. Now that's interesting actually. Yeah, that's interesting. That leaf switch connector feels a little bit loose, so that might be part of the problem that we've got, because that's quite wobbly on the board just there. But anyways, I think what we're going to have to do is just bite the bullet with this and get everything away. I can see a yellow connector here, which is the earth to the speaker just down there. Then we've got the blue and yellow, which are the positives to the speakers, and the negative to the speakers are here, the black and the white. Then we've got the condenser mics. Now I thought they may have been speakers, little piezo speakers, but I think they're condenser mics. Yes, they are. So that's the green one and the red ones as well. Right, that's all of those. Anything else we've missed? I'm sure there will be. But that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's 10, 11 things to get away, plus the heads here on this multi-plug. So I'm going to get going with those, get those away, and then we'll see what that leaves us with. Right, that's the majority of the cables away for now at least. So I'll also get that actuator away. These things have a habit of falling off otherwise anyway. Right, what I'm going to do then, I think, is get some screws away. There's 1, 2, 3 and 4 that I can see. Maybe more hidden that I can't quite see at the moment. But the cassette mech screws, from what I can see, are actually underneath. So I may well have to get this top board away at least to get to the mech screws. But I'm actually just going to mark the board, my usual trick, just to remind me exactly where the screws came from. And it's always worth keeping the screws together as well in sets so that you know where they're from. Right, I'm working on the basis that the tuning cap is all going to come away. What I will do is take the knob off anyway. And I'm expecting this to fall out, even if it doesn't come out now. Right, here we go. What have we got? Right. Now these cables are also twisted, which suggests they are there to give us access. But can we get them away? Okay, there is a screw there. There is a screw there which may get this daughter board away as well. I'll tell you what, I'm going to lose the handle while I'm at it, and get these knobs off as well. There we go, that job's done now. I might actually try and take the whole chassis thing out, I think. So there's some screws hidden away at the back here. There's one. One between the pots just there. And I'm going to return to this one. Right, okay. That explains why there's a black screw on the corner that I can get to here in the corner of the mech, because it may well be that those are the screws that hold everything together. One more on the end. One just off to the side of the radio board here. So that's 5 out so far, which will be one on the radio board or just to the side, one on the corner of the cassette mech, one just beneath the display board, and then 2 up there. Right, we'd normally expect to have to eject the cassette to remove the mech. There's the screw for the... I'm talking in tongues at the moment, but I'm just sort of thinking as I go. There's the screw for the phono board. I couldn't see it at first. So we've got a little gold coloured screw for the phono board. That will allow that, with a bit of a twist, to come out. Right, okay, I'm just going to tidy up these screws, I think, in a minute, and see if we can get this away. There we go, right. Okay. I see. I think the key is going to be to untwist. Oh no, because the phono board's away anyway. Right, what else can we do then? Turn it upside down. Oops. Okay, we might need to unpick some of these cables, so I'm just going to take a quick picture, and then hopefully that'll allow us to move the board potentially over to the front, out of the way. Let's see how we get on with that. Right, still not ideal, I've got to be honest. Still not ideal. Right, okay. The fun thing about turning these circuit boards inside out and upside down like this is you really can find yourself a little bit stuck. You've got to make sure you put them all back in the right position afterwards. Right, anyways, so I think in typical TRK fashion, it's actually the brown motor supply cable here that's catching us out and holding us back, I think. So I think, given that we've got to give this mech a decent clean anyway, and see if we can clean up that grease and get it moving again, we may as well desolder the motor whilst we're at it. Right, so now the motor cable, he says, is away. Yeah, it's still not ideal, to be honest with you. It's not perfect. So these blooming, where are they? Yeah, these ones here are still pulling. Let's see if we can free them up a bit. There we go. Marvellous, that's got it. Good stuff. Right, so I'll bring you back into frame and we'll have a look at this mech. Okay, we're just going to mark the screws here because I think it's going to be time to get this away in a minute. I say mark the screws, I'm assuming that these have to come out. Well, I'll mark the ones that I take out at least, and then at least we know where we're at. So it's the corner one here. And we've got this one on the side. I'm going to go for the corner one as well. There we go. Yep, and that's the one. That's the one that keeps it loose. Apologies, by the way, sometimes I've got my hands right in the camera. I've got an overhead camera and I tend to use really long screwdrivers so that I can work semi-remotely, but obviously if I'm right over if the screwdriver's going to be bashing the microphone and stuff, then that's not good for you guys, so that's why I do that sometimes. Right, anyways, so let's try this eject again on the mech, and let's see, here she is. There's the mech. Okay, yep. Also, I'm just going to peel these other cables away because they are for the heads. There we go. Right, just gently. What else? What else? Nothing else. Perfect. So here's the mech then, and all that's come with it is the motor, which we've desoldered. We've got the leaf switch cables which come all the way out and go around to the side of the board, and then of course we've got the multi-plug for the heads. Right, okay, we're making good progress. I'm going to put this aside and let's get ourselves a bit organised, shall we? Now that that's out, by the way, just wanted to say, I've just been having a look at this actual kind of mech part here, the internal chassis, and I'd realised now there is another screw. Remember those black screws that we took out that were sort of one down the side there, 2, 3 and 4. I've just found another one in this hole in the corner. So now, right, what was that? Looks like some sort of tab that's broken off previously, but in any event, this is, just bear with me. Here is the tuner cord arrangement. So that all comes out. In fact, I can probably just pan back a little bit for you. There we go. So there's your tuning cord arrangement. and your indicator lights across there, so we can give this a bit of a wipe if we want to. And also though, the good thing about this in particular is it gives us access to the pots as well, so we can get into here. Well, I can't quite show you because I'm tangled up with all these wires and it's stopping me from getting across to you with the camera a bit. But anyway, here we go. So here's the pots here, and remember we said that the volume was really crackly, and also the balance was stopping the left or right channel, I should say, from working properly. It was very intermittent, so we can get in there now, give them a good clean as well. But for now, the main thing I wanted to do was just put that to one side. The case itself is in superb condition. It just needs a very gentle dust on the inside. We'll polish the inside of the tuner window and maybe get into some of the nooks and crannies that we can't always clean when the transport buttons are all in place. But basically that's kind of it for that. Right, onwards. So here we go then, as I see it, and this is quite common when you're cleaning up or servicing boomboxes. You tend to have the casing to address and clean up and fix any broken studs and things like that. You then have the cassette mech, which you obviously need to replace belts, clean it, degrease it, re-lube it, clean the heads, the caps and pinch roller, treat the idlers, maybe the idler rubbers need doing, all that sort of stuff. And then the final and third part is then the actual internal chassis, switch cleaning, pot cleaning, that kind of thing. So I think what I'm going to do is make a quick coffee and then just clean the case, get the easy job done out of the way. Speaking of coffee, if you don't mind heading over to my Buy Me a Coffee page, that would really be helpful with regard to buying the belts and stuff like that and consumables. No obligation, you're very welcome here either way, but just thought I'd mention it while I'm going to grab myself a quick cuppa. Anyway, I'll be back in a second. Okay, I've just spent a couple of minutes off camera cleaning this up, polishing the tuner window and giving it a general zhuzh. Obviously we'll give it a proper polish once we get it all back together again, and we'll do the back casing then as well, because there isn't anything on that we can't get to when it's fully reassembled. So the next stage, I think, is just to get on and clean these switches and pots. Then we can focus on the big job of the day, which is the cassette mech. Right, that's all the pots and switches cleaned. So I'm going to go and put this into a preheated oven now, gas mark 3 for 20 minutes. Not really, I've just put it on a shelf out of the way. So here we go then. Here's what we're all about today, the cassette mech. So the main complaint then really with regarding to the mech was that the play button didn't work, did it at all? So we figured it was odd that it was fast forwarding and rewinding, which tends to suggest that the belts are intact, and indeed they are. We can see the belts working nicely here. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't even have changed them necessarily. We might find when we take them off that they do need replacing, but to be honest with you, they look really good. They seem to fit nice. But there we go. So there's obviously something to do with the electrical pickup on the play button itself. Now the heads we can sort of forget about for a minute, because there's no reason to suspect there's a problem with any of that side of things. But here's the two cables from the leaf switch. The leaf switch itself seems to be okay. It looks to be intact, and we know that it works because it actually initiates the fast forward and the rewind okay. So it's really something to do with whatever happens when we press play, and it's not actually making quite enough of a contact. So I think, looking at this now, we may just not quite be closing the switch enough. So Yeah, I'm going to take a closer look at that. I'll bring you in so you can see what I'm talking about, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I've brought you in for a slightly closer look, but I want you to see sort of everything as best as we can here. So I will just remove the counter belt, or at least pull it to one side, because we don't need that for a second. So here's the leaf switch then, and essentially what we've got are power to the motor coming in on this one, which is permanent supply from the board. And then in order to stop the tape from continuously running, you've got a leaf switch here, so two blades of metal with the corresponding cables coming off of each contact there, which go to the board. And what happens is when we activate either play, fast forward or rewind, so you then move the actuator just here, if you can see that, which in turn presses the contacts of the leaf switch together and closes the circuit and gives us power to the motor. Now what's happening is, I think it was fast forward that was working, and play didn't work at all, and rewind worked. If you remember, we sort of had to keep pressing it. It's so marginal, and I'm wondering if maybe we just need to tweak the contacts or move the position of the leaf switch just slightly in order to do that. And I think I'm just going to just try and prove a theory or disprove it. Is I've got my multimeter here, and I get that on continuity. It's slightly off screen, but you can hear that going. And what I'm just going to do is hook that up to the contacts on the leaf switch, like so. And you can see that nothing's happening at the moment because the circuit is correctly open. If I move the contacts together, needs a bit of a clean, I think, as well. That's better. Okay, so we've got contact now, but not now. Now, but not now. So let's try the fast forward, which you think is going to work. We should get a continuous beep now, which would imitate the power to the motor. But we don't. Okay. Or rewind. Or fast forward, in fact. So it would appear that none of these are actually forming the circuit properly yet. Either one of my cables has come loose, or if I give it an extra nudge, yeah, I don't know if it's the switch. It might be the position of the switch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just bend the leaf gently back, and I think we'll try that first. I've just given the switch another quick clean actually, and it's definitely working okay. So I'm going to press play. Yeah, see? There we go. There's the issue. Right, okay. There. So, oh, of course, right, okay, play. Right, now it's... There we go. Right, play's still not working, actually. Play's not working, but if I just nudge it now... There it is. Okay, so we've cleaned it. It was basically a tiny bit dirty, I think, which is why it wasn't staying on. Oh, it's marginal. But fast forward and rewind work, and I think that's what we found, wasn't it? Is that fast forward did work. Hang on. Yeah, it's all just marginal. It's all marginal. So, yeah, fine. Okay. Well, that's almost certainly then the pins just need moving very slightly on that. So we'll do that in a minute. I was going to say we'll clean the mech first and get everything moving, but given that that is literally as far in as it will go, that's not actually grease that's causing that. That is the position of the leaf springs. So I'm just going to bend those real gently now, and then hopefully we'll be in a position where we get full contact on play, fast forward and rewind, and then that should cure the issue, and then we'll be able to give the whole mech a decent clean and take a look at these belts, get some new ones on. So nothing crazy here, and I'm going to go off mic, so bear with me while I just bend these a little bit. Yep, that's not quite enough, so I have to do it properly. Sometimes you can get away with that. Other times, like now, you're going to have to remove the switch itself and go from there. So that's all we've got to do. Actually allows us to clean it better as well if we'd wanted to. But you can get a better idea now of what's going on. Basically, these two blades get pushed together. And as I say, all we want to do is just very gently bend them over so that they're not touching. We don't want them touching each other. I think I've probably overcooked it now, but sometimes it's easier to bend them back. But anyway, I'm going to get this back on now, and we'll see that I've massively overcooked that. But then we can tweak them back in a second. It's just a case of fettling it until we get it right. I'm going to get this counter belt off actually, because it's kind of in my way and I don't want to get it all greasy. There we go. So I've just over tweaked them, as it were. So what I'm expecting is to get continuity as soon as I connect the power lead up. There we go. Right, so now all I want to do is just very gently break that now. There we go. So if we press play now, in fact let's do fast forward that we knew worked, and that's solid and continuous. Rewind, that was intermittent, nice and strong. And so here we go then. So this, if we get a beep now, this tells us that play is going to work when we actually put it back together again. And that's it. So for whatever reason, whether that's been looked at in the past, moved, distorted, overpressed, could be anything, but they're only very gentle blades, and the key is just to don't go mad with them, just give them enough of a tweak so that they're almost touching, in fact, but obviously you don't want them constantly in contact because the motor would permanently be on. What you want is just when this actuator comes across, rewind, fast forward, play. Good. Alright, now you can see that the actual return of the mech, there's a song about that, I think. The return on the mechanism springs here is quite lazy, it's sluggish. Certainly I can feel that my fingers are getting caked in grease and stuff. So I'm going to give all that a clean, but I'm just going to get this get these cables away a minute. So we don't need those. We will also though just have a look at these belts while we're here. And there we have it. Right. Okay. Well, that belt doesn't look the end of the world, got to be honest. And there's the counter belt as well. I think they would have worked fine, but I've got every faith that the issue with these are great little mechs actually, and I've got every faith that that was just the issue with it. So what I'm going to do now is just spend a bit of time going through this with some alcohol, dissolving out the old grease, re-lubing it, and yeah, we'll clean the idler tyre, I think, maybe put a drop of oil on the motor spindle. Over this side we'll also do the grease degreasing, and we'll clean the heads, we'll clean the capstan, which looks pretty grubby, and the pinch roller as well. So yeah, I'll kind of just crack on. I'll do probably a little quick montage with that, and I'll also see if I can find the correct belts for it as well. And then, yeah, I reckon we're making some solid progress on this one. Nice one. Alrighty, so I think everything's pretty much clean. We've given it a general sort of degrease, moved the sliders, lubricated those, cleaned the heads, the pinch roller, also cleaned the flywheel with the capstan, but we'll oil that in a minute when we put it back in. Also oiled the motor spindle and just cleaned up again around there, make sure there's no residual traces of oil. Clean the idler rubber here as well. So I'm just going to put that mech back into there. This slightly awkward little spring, but we'll figure it out. Okay, it's time to get the belts on, I think. So first thing is just put the tiniest little drop of oil on the capstan, and then we can feed that through. Beautiful. Nice. Right, okay. Time for the belts as well. So we've got the counter and main belt. And I'll get the counter on first. Actually, it might have been foolish putting that flywheel in. Let's get better access this way. Yep. Yeah, happy with that. That's lovely. Right, now we'll get the flywheel back in. Good stuff. Right. And this belt goes around the motor spindle, the flywheel, and idler pulley just there. Then we can get the backing plate back on. Like so. Good. Okay, happy with that. So before we forget, we'll just put the oil retaining washer onto the capstan. Push that all the way home. And just clean the capstan again with some alcohol to remove any of the remaining oil. Don't want that on there, contaminating everything. Good. Okay, so we've cleaned the capstan and oiled it. We've cleaned the pinch roller, the heads, the mechanism, re-lubricated the parts we wanted to. We've oiled the motor spindle, got the new main drive belt and the counter belt on, adjusted the leaf spring. So I reckon we're good enough to start getting this back into the case now. Okay, and just before I do put it back in the case, I'm going to hook it up to some direct power here just to make sure everything's working okay. So here we go. Oh, lovely. Nice. That's smooth as silk, that is. That really is. Beautiful. Of course, we oiled the motor spindle as well. Let's just see if we can turn this around. We'll put a tape in. Now before, it was it fast forward that worked, wasn't it? So let's try that. Lovely, you can see the counter going there. Rewind was intermittent, if you remember, it kept coming back off. That's working a treat now. And then play didn't work at all, did it? So here we go then. Fingers crossed. Superb. Right, so now comes the time to put it all back together again. So it's all a bit of a jumble. There's kind of cables, wires and all sorts of stuff everywhere at the moment. So we're going to try and figure out exactly how this goes back together again, very gently and very carefully. So I'm going to crack on and do that. Basically I need to kind of make sure all these other cables that are in there are out of the way, make sure everything else is kind of the right way up. Now from memory, I think, there we go, just do this super careful for a minute. Right. That's it. Right, so that's the actuator that just fell out. Okay, what do we got? Right, that's right, isn't it? So we get these cables all out of the way, and if I remember rightly, we got this chassis part back in first, didn't we? So we can do that now. And by the way, everything I took out is in its own little pot, so I know that these ones here are indeed the chassis screws, so we'll get those in. Good, right, well that's that bit done then. You just live and learn, don't you? Next time we'd know that we've just got to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws out, and basically the whole thing had come away, plus the one from the mech, I think. Right, okay, well I'm going to leave you in peace for a minute and just kind of figure out how all this kind of came out and went back in and all the rest of it. But I think the first job is we've got to get the actual mech back inside as well. So we'll do that. And I'll see you shortly. Okay, after a bit of jiggery pokery, we're almost there. So we've got the positive and negative for the speaker here with the condenser mic. We've got the same for the other side. Speakers and condenser mic cables are at the back here. Slightly out of view, admittedly. Right, we've got an earth one there to go on. We've got the heads cable there. We've got the 2 leaf switch contacts there. I've also put the first of the actuators for the radio board as well into place, because that has to kind of drop through the locating peg on the way down, and indeed the tuning cap has to now rest back into its position. So I think with a bit of jiggery pokery and a bit of a push, we should be able to get this home. And that, I think, is that. Good stuff. Yeah, you've got to make sure you don't mess with the tuning capacitor or touch the tuning dial or anything like that, because of course that has to locate back onto the peg when you drop it in. And as I say, it's very difficult to get this particular actuator for the switch off. Well, I say that, it can be very difficult. So it's quite nice to line that up first and drop it all in one go. We've already cleaned the switches, so I think I'm just going to drop in the 4 screws now just to hold this back into place. Make sure I haven't missed any other screws on the way. Then we'll get the little radio board back on as well. Just want to make sure that everything's as kind of neat and tidy as it can be. Bearing in mind, of course, that once you get these boards out, you end up with cables kind of running everywhere. So I want to try and make sure that everything can go back as neat and tidy as possible. There we go, perfect. And I'm not too proud to admit to my mistakes. I've just merrily got this board on here and got the cables nice. And I was just about to say about putting the screws back in. One of the reasons I keep all these separate pots, I mean, there's the radio board screws just there. I've got one with the headphone screw in it. But also, I just found this one that says mech screws. And there's only 3 in there. And it's got a label mech screws. And then I remembered, of course, I forgot in my haste to get the chassis ones in. I screwed the mech in on that chassis corner. Forgot to put the other 3 screws into the mech. So, it happens to all of us, but at least if you keep everything neat and tidy, you will know if you've missed something. And I'd rather find it now than when I've put everything else back together. There we go, I've just dropped them back in, and of course ably helped by the little black dots we'd made earlier for our reference, so I know exactly where they need to go. And also these cables are all tucked back in nicely where they came from. So try again. And this time we've got the little pot with the radio board screws, so we'll get them in. Not just the radio board, of course, it's the entire circuit board there, but I know what I mean by that. Right. Just get this headphone board back in. Lovely. And there was a fair old twist to these cables as well, so we'll keep them out of the way. Right, let's start putting all these back together then. So I think we're all in now. We've got the leaf switch contacts in, we've got the earth just there, we've got the negatives and positives for either speaker attached, we've got the left and right condenser mics, we've got the heads connected, we've cleaned all the switches, lubricated everything, connected both the actuators for the function switches. So I think let's get some power in it and see if it works. So all that remains is to get the motor on then. We'll just solder that back on. And we should be in business. Okie dokie, well we're ready to power it up I think. So got an auxiliary power supply just here. So we'll see if this works. Oh yeah, straight away, nice. So that's just me working the volume. So that crackle has gone now. And the balance, yep, that's going from left to right, to left, to right. So having cleaned the pots has made a big difference. If you remember, we lost one of the channels before, so that's fantastic news. Right then, here we go. Let's just very gingerly, I'm not sure if the power's going to stay on there, so you might not see much for the moment, but we're going to move this over to tape. And this is genuinely the first time I'll have done this now. So tape is in. Obviously we'll do it properly in a bit. If it works we can get it all back together properly. But fast forward. Nice. Okay, rewind, which didn't work before if you remember. Yes, so smooth as well. Okay guys, here we go. Play didn't work whatsoever, so hopefully now we'll have something to go with. You won't hear much because of the content match, but let's see what happens. Okay, that probably didn't sound at all good to you because I've just messed about with all the speeds for the content match, but that's good stuff. It all works nicely, so I'm going to get it back together, then we'll find a longer bit of tape and we'll play something and test it out properly. So all the checks have worked out alright. All that remains now is to button up the back casing, give it a polish, and then time for the final reveal. So here it is then, the Hitachi TRK-8000E. What a lovely little machine. I've got to be honest, it was harder work than I thought inside. I thought it was going to be a lot more sort of simple and modern in many respects with multi-plugs and what have you, but it turned out to be more like the old 8080 and stuff like that. So there was loads of different cables to disconnect. But anyway, it came in pretty good condition to be fair, but nonetheless has had a decent deep clean and polish as well. But the radio worked to a degree, but everything was kind of offset by the fact that the volume control was extremely crackly and the balance control was corroded as well, so we were dropping one of the channels every time we tried to move the balance control. So we've cleaned the pots and the switches and addressed all of that, which is fantastic. Also, it quote now, needed a new belt, that old chestnut, and suffice to say the belts actually weren't too bad, and it wasn't that was the problem. It was the leaf switch had been bent so that rewind was only intermittent and there was no power getting to the motor at all during the playback. So we've made an adjustment to the leaf spring, put some new belts on anyway, and the mechanism was pretty greasy and gunked up, so we've degreased and re-lubricated that. We've cleaned the heads, the capstan, the pinch roller, the pulleys, we've oiled the motor spindle, and just generally given it a good overhaul and a service. So I think the first thing we'll do is just have a quick listen to the radio. And I've turned the lights out real quick so we don't get any interference from the FM, but let's turn this up now.
I think actually we were discussing this yesterday off air. This Katy Perry
and there's the right channel and the left channel.
Had an actual sax solo.
Good stuff.
Lamp, Castle and Gardens, where, in its legendary Turret of Terror, the spirit of the cat... Chocolate finger time, so it's not just a biscuit.
Correct, and it's a chance for us all to come together and enjoy something together. So we're not asking you what's your favourite biscuit. We're not asking you, you know, do you put butter on your digestive? We're simply just having a finger.
Exactly. We've already determined which...
There we go. I just thought I'd point the mic to the stereo just real quick so you can get a bit more of an idea of how that sounds. Let's get the lights back on. And I think it's time to try the tape mech. So, nice strong eject on that. And here we go. Play. And rewind. We're at the beginning of the tape almost. Fast forward. The counter's working nicely. Belts are pulling beautifully. It's silky smooth. And typically just found the end of another song. So we'll turn this over. It's funny, every time I go to demonstrate a tape, I find the silent spot in the middle of the tracks. Let's try this one. There we go. And we'll just have a listen with this little orchestra tape as well. Pretty old tape this, but you'll get the idea. And that sounds pretty good, to be fair. Precision ground belts on these, so you don't get so much wow and flutter. They're not the highest spec units in the world, these, but at least with modern belts and cleaning everything through, we get as decent a reproduction as we can. So that's all good stuff. But anyway, there we go. So that's the Hitachi TRK-8000E. As I say, the mech's working properly now, and the radio works a treat. The channels are all good. Volume control has got no crackle left. It's had a deep clean and a polish, and she's all good to go. So thanks very much indeed for watching. Stay safe. I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, as I say, look after yourselves, and all the best for now. Bye bye.
I'm a bit of damn musical memory lane. Well, Lee John from Imagination.